Welcome to the next part of the discussion on accounting for quantitative techniques. We ended on discussing PERT, and now let's proceed with linear programming. Linear programming is a quantitative technique used to find the optimal solution to short-term resource allocation problems such as the maximization of revenue, contribution margin, or profit function, or the minimization of a cost function subject to constraints which are the limited resources, production capacity levels, etc. So linear programming has been discussed I think under the statistics course. Uh, but we have to analyze this because the quantitative techniques has been a vital element in the management advisory services CIPALE board subject. So other business applications of linear programming is the determination of the best product mix, the optimum material mix, the assignment of jobs to manufacturing equipment, the workforce schedules, and the determination of transportation routes. Okay, let us proceed on looking at the methods in solving linear programming problems. The graphical method and the simplex method. I think for this discussion we will focus on the graphical method because the simplex method is a long, tedious process which should be taught to you in your statistics course. So the graphical method is limited to problems with only two variables. So let us illustrate this. So, Mimon Corporation produced two products, the girl rag doll and the boy rag doll, which must be processed in two departments, the sewing and the finishing. The sewing has 240 hours available per month, while finishing has 192 hours. The number of hours required to process the products in the two departments and the contribution margin per unit are as follows. So, bibigyan tayo daw ng data related to girl rag doll and the boy rag doll. So, ito yung CM per unit, the required hours para magawa yung bawat item ng doll. So ano ba ang tinatanong? How many units of girl rag dolls and boy rag dolls must be produced to maximize contribution margin? Because ibig sabihin, the orientation or the goal here is to maximize the contribution margin. So step 1, we restate the information in mathematical terms by expressing the objective function and the constraint. So what is the objective function? Maximize the contribution margin, which is equal to 32G. Yung 32 is the contribution margin per unit, yung G is the number of units ng girl ragdoll. Yung 24 is the CM per unit ng boy ragdoll at yung B is the number of units of the boy ragdoll. Subject to the constraint. So, express din natin yung constraint function. Ano ba ang constraint dyan? Eh di yung number of hours. Kasi ang sabi kanina, yung sewing and finishing, ang number of hours lang yan ay 240 and 192 respectively. So 4G plus 2B is less than or equal to 240 for a sewing constraint, and 2G plus 4B for our finishing constraint. Okay. Paano ang pagbasa nito? Paano nakuha yung 4G and 2B? Ganun siya, 4G plus 2B. Ito naman, 2G plus 4B. Kasi ang pinag-uusapan is yung constraint. Okay? Bakit siya less than or equal to 240? Kasi nga, ang sabi, yan yung limitation ng number of hours sa department ng sewing and finishing. Meron siyang non-negativity constraint because hindi pwedeng negative yung number of units. Wala namang negative number of units, kaya naka-represent din itong non-negativity constraint. Hindi pwedeng maging negative yung G at B kasi number of units ang pinag-uusapan po dyan. Okay, let's take a look at step 2. Plot the constraints in the problem or on a graph. So locate mo muna the terminal points, the x and y intercepts where one of the variables is equal to 0. Join the terminal points by a straight line. So look at sewing constraint muna tayo ng 4G plus 2B is less than or equal to 240. So, kailangan nating kuhanin yung y and x intercept. So, paano natin siya kukunin? I-represent mo yung bawat items muna as 0, yung isang variable. Okay? For example, if g is 0, si b magiging 120. Paano nakuha yun? 240 divided by 2. Okay? If B is 0, si G ay magiging 60 because 240 divided by 4 using the sewing constraint. Using the finishing constraint naman, if G is 0, B is 48. If B is 0, G is 96. So you have to solve for this to check. So ano ang gamit niyan? Ang gamit po niyan is dahil nakuha mo na yung intercepts niya, pwede mo yang i-plot sa iyong graph. Paano po siya i-graph, sir? For example, using this graph, yung G represented as the x-axis and B represented as the y-axis. So ito, 0 and 120. 0 yung G, yung B ay 120, so nandun siya. Si B ay 0, si G ay 60, so nandito siya. So ito yung sewing constraint. Same is true with your finishing constraint. Ito siya. Okay? Then, i-plot mo sila parehas sa iisang graph. Okay. So, na-plot na po, sir. Kung saan sila nag-meet, yung portion kung saan nag-overlap yung graph will be your feasible region. Ito yung MELD. Sir, saan po nanggaling yung MELD? Ala, ginawa lang po yun. Tawag lang dun sa points. Yung point at 00, yung point 048, point L4824, and point D60, 0. So, the feasible region is where all the constraints are satisfied. Any combination of G and B within this region is a feasible solution. So, any combination ng G and B dito ay mag-a-arrive doon sa constraints na sinet natin. So, the problem here under the graphical method is dapat maayos yung pagkakagawa at accurate yung pagkakaplot ng mga points because you will only be referring to your graph. Yung graph mo ang magiging basis ng iyong plotting of points. So kung medyo hindi maayos yung measurements ng intervals ng mga points mo dyan, ay pwedeng magkaroon ng minor errors on your computation. Okay. Yung point L, pwede mo siyang makita using the graph. Pwede mong i-identify na 4824 yan. However, there is an alternative solution for you to analyze. Pwede mong gamitan ng algebra. It can be located algebraically by solving the two equations. Paano yan isa-solve? This has been taught to you in your algebra. Yung combining the like terms, ganon. For example, the 4G plus 2B is 240. 4G, para maalis natin yung 4G, yung G item natin, minultiply yan ng 2. Ganon. Then, when you compute B for 24, you substitute it with the formula, and then you will get 24 and 48 this. Thus, the point L is 48, 24. Okay? So, using the objective function that tests the four corners point M, E, and LD to see which yields the greatest contribution margin. So, gamitin natin yung points na nakuha natin dun sa feasible region, yung pinaka mga endpoints niya, 00, 048, 48, 24, and 60. So, i-plot mo po doon sa objective function mo na maximize CM, yung 32G plus 24B. So, pag na-compute mo, kung sino yung pinakamataas, yun yung point kung saan merong highest total contribution margin. So, anong sagot? Hence, point L yields the highest total contribution margin na 2,112. Therefore, the best product combination is 48 units of ragdolls and 24 units of boy ragdolls kasi 48, 24. Yun ang ibig sabihin yan. Para ma-maximize o mas malaki ang kitain mo, dapat ang i-produce mong girl ragdolls ay 48 at 24 lang na boy ragdolls. Okay? Okay. Let's take a look at the shadow price or the dual value of a scarce resource. The amount by which the value of the optimal solution of the objective function in a linear programming problem will change if one unit change is made in a binding constraint. So computation of shadow price is an application of sensitivity analysis. The shadow price is the income that would be lost by not adding or an additional unit of a scarce resource, or in deciding whether to add an additional scarce resource or not, the shadow price must be greater than the actual cost of such additional resource. So dapat mas mataas siya. So, paano natin ma-analyze ito. Let us illustrate. Consider the data in the previous illustration. Di ba? Ito yung maximize function o yung objective function. 32G plus 24B. Ito rin yung constraint mo. Di ba ang sabi, ang optimal solution mo, sabi 48 girl ragdolls and 24 na units ng B. Para ang contribution margin mo ay 2,112. Ang sabi sa under the shadow price, papaano daw kapag nag-add ka ng 1 unit sa iyong constraint? Anong magiging effect daw nun? So take a look at this. The original function of the constraint is 4G plus 2B. Mag-add ka ng plus 1 dun sa limitation. Di ba ito yung limitation? 240 lang kasi ang sewing constraint eh. Ang 240 hours lang ang pwede sa sewing division. So mag-add ka ng 1 hour pa. So, anong magiging effect daw niyan? Let us take a look. So, 4G plus 2B is equal to 241. So, 2G minus 2G plus 4B is 192 minus 2 ka dyan. Okay. Diba? When ito yung gamitin na lang natin siguro para mas madali. Diba? Para ma-solve natin yung B niya. So, gamitin natin itong minultiply yung 2G plus 4B is equal to 192 sa 2. Diba? Para ma-eliminate natin yung 4G. Sa negative 2, I mean. So, negative 4G minus 8B ay minultiply siya sa negative 2. So, negative 384. So, ilan na ang items? Negative 6b is equal to negative 143. Na kanina, 144. So, 143 divided by 6 is 23.83. Na kanina ay 24. So, what will be the effect of these changes in the constraints? So, kung ipa-plot mo yung 23.83 sa 4g plus 2b, ang magiging g mo na dyan ay 48.335. So the new optimal solution is to produce 48.335 units of G and 23.83 units of B. So what will be the effect? So ang dati 2,112 ang total contribution margin. Pero nung nag-add ka ng 1 hour, additional 1 hour for the sewing division, 2,118.64 ang naging new contribution margin mo. Mas mataas siya. Ibig sabihin, mas mataas siya ng 6.64. So, this is called the shadow price. Anong interpretation natin dyan? Ang sinasabi dito, if the company could acquire an additional hour for the sewing department, it could earn contribution margin of 6.64 in deciding whether to acquire an additional hour for the sewing department. The actual cost of such additional hours should be less than 6.64 that the company would benefit from such expansion of capacity. 'Di ba? When we compute, 6.64 ang additional na magiging benefit natin diyan. So therefore, kung mag-a-add ka ng 1 hour, mayroong related cost doon. So dapat mas mababa na sa 6.64 yung magiging cost kasi yun lang naman pala ang kikitain mo. Okay? So, kung mag-a-add ka, I repeat, kung mag-a-add ka ng additional hours sa sewing division, merong related cost doon. Pwedeng merong mga opportunity cost na mawawala sa ibang preparations ng sewing divisions. So, dapat, mas mababa sa 6.64 ang cost nun kasi ang kikitain mo lang for this course of action is 6.64. Okay? So that is an item to be decided. So yung quantitative techniques will guide you as you go along these discussions. Okay, let's proceed with the queuing theory. The queuing theory is a study, or the waiting line theory is a study of random arrivals at a processing or servicing facility or limited capacity. It allows a decision maker to calculate the lengths of future lines, waiting lines, the average time spent in line waiting, service, or processing, additional facilities required, the service level or capacity that minimizes waiting and operating costs. So, ano mga example? The checkout counter sa mga groceries or malls, the movie ticket booths, expressway toll booths, school registrar's office at windows, mga office of admissions, the bank teller windows. So, anong sinasabi lang dito? So normally, lahat ng mga establishments na lagi kang may nakikitang mga nakapila, dapat may analysis tayo doon sa, meron tayong technique na gagawin for us to analyze kung meron bang problems related to the cashier, the operations, or baka doon sa system na ginagamit natin. Okay. Let us look at the objective of the queuing theory is to minimize the total cost involved, both the service and the waiting cost. So, meron po tayong ibibigay sa inyong formula related to the queuing theory. One is the N, the NQ, and the W. N is the average number of work units waiting in line or being served. B, represented as the average number of work units arriving in 1 unit of time, and T, average number of work units serviced in 1 unit of time, assuming there is no shortage of work units. So the formula is N is equal to B divided by T, the quantity T minus B. Later, mag-discuss natin kung paano siya gamitin. The NQ is the average number in the waiting line. So yung B is squared divided by T times the quantity of T minus B. And W is the average waiting time before service is the computed NQ divided by the B. Yung B is the average number of work units arriving in 1 unit of time. Okay. Medyo mahirap siyang tingnan kung formulas ang titingnan mo, but it is easy for me to discuss also if we look at the illustration. So, for example, in a supermarket, customers arrive at the cashier's counter at the average rate of 20 per hour. 20 customers per hour. The cashier can serve an average of 30 customers per hour. So, in this example daw, B is 20, T is 30. So, paano naging B is 20? Tingnan nga natin. B is the average number of work units arriving in 1 unit of time. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung mga customer na dumadating. Tama ba? Tama. Si cashier, kumbaga, may customers arrive at the cashier at the average of 20 customer per hour. So, yan yung natatanggap mong customer per hour. 20 daw. Yung T is the average number of work units serviced in 1 unit of time, assuming there's no shortage of work units. So, the cashier can serve an average of 30 customers per hour. So, parang ito yung capacity. Ito yung capacity ng cashier. So, 20 yung dumadating sa kanya per hour, pero ang capacity niya 30. So, ibig sabihin, okay pa. Kasi kaya niyang iserve yan lahat. So, number 1, ang tatanungin sa'yo dito is the N. What is the N? The average number of work units waiting in line or being served. So imagine mo, kinukompute natin yung kung ilang customer ang nag-aantay based on these assumptions. So how do we compute? So B, your B is the average number of work units arriving. So B is 20, di ba? Divided by the quantity of T minus B. So, 30 minus 20. So, ito yun. 20 divided by 10. So, 2. So, 2 customers. Anong ibig sabihin ng 2 customers? Ibig sabihin, dalawang customer ang nag-aantay sa'yo. The average number of customers waiting in line or paying for their groceries at any time. So, at any time, may 2 customers na nag-aantay sa'yo, dapat. So what is the use of this? The use of this is for the managers. For example, ang N mo ay 2 lang. Pero pag pag ikaw ay umikot at nag-supervise ka diyan, nakikita mo na parang laging ang haba ng pila, 5 or more or 10 or more ang customers. Based on our computation, dahil ikaw ay equipped ng quantitative techniques, alam mo na dapat 2 customers lang. Ibig sabihin, there is something wrong. it's either on the system, the machine na ginagamit natin, or the cashier or the personnel na involved dun sa cashiering function. Kasi yan yun eh. Baka hindi niya na-accomplish yung functions niya properly, baka medyo mabagal siya sa pagsusukli or sa paggamit ng computer, or pwedeng mayroong pwedeng mabilis naman siya pero ang bagal ng system laging naglalag. So those are the scenarios na kailangan nating pag-aralan as managers. So this will guide you as you observe or as you monitor the operations of the business. So yan. So ngayon, kapag pumunta ka sa mga malls or sa magbabayad ka ng tuition fee or other, pwede mo nang ma-compute ang number of cost, the end of the transactions. Kaya lang dapat alam mo kung ilan ang capacity niya at ilan ang average na dumadating on a particular period of time. Okay? Number 2, the average number of customers waiting in line. So imagine mo, kukumpitin pa rin natin yung number of customers na waiting in line na hindi nasiservisyohan, not being serviced. So this is your NQ. Di ba ang sabi, average number in the waiting line? Na hindi nasiservisyohan. Yung N, ito yung nasiservisyohan. Waiting on or being serviced. Pwedeng waiting siya or part of it is being serviced. Pero yung NQ, yung mismong hindi nasiservisyohan. So how do we compute for this? Using the formula, the answer is 1 and 1/3 customers. The average waiting time using the formula is 4 minutes. NQ divided by B. Ibig sabihin, kung magtanong ka dyan sa bawat isang customer na nakapila, gaano katagal na po kayong nakapila? Pag sinabi niyang 30 minutes, aba, ibig sabihin may mali. Kasi dapat, the average waiting time is 4 minutes. Okay? Okay, let's proceed with learning curves and sensitivity analysis. This will be the last discussions. Learning curves or the experience curves, this is a mathematical expression or pwedeng na-encounter mo ito sa iyong economics of the phenomenon that incremental unit cost to produce or incremental unit time used to produce decrease as managers and labor gain experience from practice. So, ang sinasabi lang dito sa learning curve ay dahil paulit-ulit mong ginagawa yung isang trabaho ay nagiging efficient ka na at mas bumibilis yung transaction. So, ang sinasabi, the learning curve model shows a constant percentage reduction, usually from 20 to 40, in the average direct labor input time required per unit as the cumulative output doubles. So, may ganun. For example, an 80% learning curve means that each time cumulative production is doubled, the time required to produce is reduced by 20%. So, tingnan natin ito. For example, yung unit 1. On average time per unit, 100 hours yan. Pero pag second unit ka na daw, 80% na lang, 100 hours times 80%, 80 hours na lang ang gugugulin mo para magawa mo yun. Same is true with the third and fourth. 80 hours times 80%. Kasi ito na yung pinanggalingan. Next, 64 times 80%. So, yun. So, the cumulative total time is 80 times 2 kasi 2 units. 64 times 4 kasi 4 units. 51.2 times 8 kasi 4 units. So, kung titingnan mo, kung isang unit ang ginawa mo, 100. Pero kung 5th through 8 units na yan, 409 hours na lang ang magugol mo. So, that is the illustration of the learning curve. Next, the sensitivity analysis, maybe this is, this is the study of how the outcome of a decision process changes as one or more of the assumptions change. Baka ngayon mo palang na-meet yung terminology ng sensitivity analysis, pero kapag tinignan mo yung discussions niya, ginagawa mo na itong matagal na, especially in the accounting for manufacturing operations. Pansinin mo, binigyan ka ng income statement. Then, binigyan ka ng mga requirement. What would profit be if sales unit increased by 20, variable cost unit decreased by 5, fixed cost decreased by 500? So, these are sensitivity analysis. Kaya siya sensitivity because any changes in one of the factors will yield change or an adjustment on the profit factors. Kaya tingnan mo yung item, eto na yun, yung B. Yung A kasi is the original data. The B is the increase in the number of units. Di ba sabi, kapag increase in the number of units, it will also have an effect on the variable cost. Kasi ang variable cost ay naka-dependent yan sa number of sales in units. So, tingnan mo na lang yung contribution margin. 2,000 times 1.2 is 2,400. Yung fixed cost mo remain 1,500. So, 900 ang profit mo. Dati 500, ngayon 900. Sa C naman, variable cost per unit decreases. Bumaba yung variable cost. May effect ba sa sales yon? Wala. Kasi variable cost on itself lang yon. Kapag sales, ang sinabi, may effect sa variable cost. Pero kung variable cost yung mismong sinabi, wala naman yung effect sa sales. Okay? So, ang variable cost mo daw will decrease by 5%. So, dating 3,000, multiply it to 95% kasi bumaba. So, 2,850. So, contribution margin mo, 2,150. Fixed cost mo, 1,500. Ang profit mo ngayon, 850. Tama ba? 850? 650 pala. Sorry. Sa fixed cost mo daw, bababa daw ng 500. 5 fixed cost, di ba? Pero bumaba. Okay? Based on this illustration, 5 minus 3 is 2. Fixed cost, 1,000. Okay? So, ang effect niyan, magiging 1,000 yung profit. In the above sensitivity analysis, different scenarios are presented showing the expected profit as the profit factors are changed. So the profit factors are the sales, variable cost, the fixed cost. So any changes on this is what is discussed under sensitivity analysis. So yun yung basic quantitative techniques that you should have learned by this time to be able for you to face the CPALI board exam once you have decided to take one. These quantitative techniques are guides for us to make decisions that are based on facts. Kasi kung haphazardly magde-decide ka on the factors based on your judgment, it will not be a proper way to accurately predict alternatives and to quantify courses of action. So I think that would end the discussion on quantitative techniques. I hope you have identified some areas that you will review more, and I hope I have imparted something that will help you as you go along with your subject. Thank you.